David Lindsay has spent 25 years telling stories on film, including Frontman, the Alex Boyé Story, and 4 seasons of Come Follow Up on BYUtv. It all traces back to a deal his sophomore year seminary teacher offered. Skip class and just read the Book of Mormon. Dave took the shortcut. By the time he got to Alma, he was rushing home from school to read more. That bargain became the first page of a lifetime testimony of Jesus Christ. Stay with us for this episode as Dave shares the seminary bargain that built his testimony, the mission that humbled him, and the quiet decision in 1992 that shaped his marriage. Welcome to the Why We Believe show, where members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints share their inspiring stories of faith and conversion to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm your host, Nathan Gwilliam. Hello, friends, and welcome to this episode of the Why We Believe show. My guest today has spent more than 25 years telling other people's stories through film. He founded Avalanche Studios right out of college and has built it into one of Utah's most respected video production companies, creating documentaries, television commercials, and content that is aired nationally. He directed the award-winning documentary Dog Valley, one of the most difficult films ever made about hate crime in rural Utah. A project that put a Latter-day Saint filmmaker right in the middle of a story about faith, violence, and a gay college student's murder. He also produced Frontman, the Alex Boyé Story, about a pop star's conversion to the church. His name is Dave Lindsay. Thanks for being with us today, Dave.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about hopefully something I could say today about my life and my story and my journey with the gospel of Jesus Christ can somehow be helpful to someone. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you start off by sharing with us something that most people don't know about you?
Oh, geez. I wasn't prepared for that question, but yeah, that's a good one. I think the thing that I did share with you about me, graduating from high school early when I was only 16. I think a lot of people, I kind of keep that on the lowdown with people. I don't really go around telling everyone that, but it did kind of help shape my life, and that was kind of an interesting challenge because that led to a lot of things through my life. So that's one thing. Gosh, what else? Recently, I got addicted to golf, but I think everybody knows about that. So I don't know.
How about the deal you made with your
that.
seminary teacher? Can you tell us
Uh,
that story?
the deal I made, that makes it sound like it's some back alley thing going on there. Yeah, so the deal with my seminary teacher. So I was, I grew up a member of the church, and when I got out of junior high, that it was kind of expected to take all the kids to sign them up for seminary. And so my family and my ward, they signed me up, and I'd heard that seminary was an optional thing, that it was release time, that it wasn't required to go to college. And so that just locked in my brain so hard, like, you know what, this is optional. You don't have to go to seminary. And my parents, I was the fourth of 6 kids. By the time I came around, my parents were a lot more lax, and they just let me do my thing, whatever I wanted. And so when it came time to go to seminary, I was like, awesome, I'm going to pick a time of class like that I would love to not have to be at school. So I'll either pick first period or the last period, or maybe a period right around lunch, before or after lunch, so I can have a long lunch. So I strategically planned my seminary truancy through this process. And so when it came to 9th grade, I just signed up for it, but then I didn't go. I just like, I don't have to, it doesn't matter. And so I didn't go. Then it came around sophomore year, and my parents signed me up again. And so it was time to go. And I think I went the first day of class, and I think my mom found out that her cousin was going to be my teacher. Her cousin was going to be my seminary teacher that year. And so she said, look, I know you didn't go to seminary last year, but my cousin's your teacher. Can you at least just go and, let's help save
Don't
face
make me
for
look bad.
Don't make me look bad in front of all the relatives. So I said, okay. So I went to seminary, and I met the teacher, and he said, look, I know according to your record, you don't have a good one. You didn't go all last year. So I don't know if you're going to be able to graduate, but, and I said, yeah, I probably won't even go this year, but my mom told me to come here, so I'm probably not going to go. And he said, well, look, this year we're studying the Book of Mormon. And he said, I will give you a passing grade if you promise to read the Book of Mormon this year. And I was like, really? that'll make my mom happy if I get a passing grade, and she doesn't even have to know that I didn't go. As long as I get a passing grade, she'll think that I went. And so I thought that was a great deal. And so I signed up immediately for that deal. But then I had to carry through with it on my end. And so I started reading the Book of Mormon. And I never read it all the way through from front to back. I'd read bits and pieces here and there, but I never really made a commitment to finish it. And so it was surprising what happened as I started to read. And I didn't like reading any books, let alone the Bible or the Book of Mormon. And so I wasn't much of a reader, even though I could read. I knew how to do it. My mom taught me how to do it young when I was like 3.5 or 4. But as I started reading the Book of Mormon, I started getting into it, and I started loving these stories and these characters. And instead of looking at it as a chore to satisfy the demands of this seminary teacher, I looked at it as like, I can't wait to get home from school so I can go read the Book of Mormon and find out what happened to Alma, And so I was excited, and I was feeling the spirit of it. And I mean, as I look back, I had felt the spirit before in other situations, but this was like the first time I really had like, something's going on here. And as I look back on my life, and I think I did not like church, I didn't want to be involved with it, but this book, something was happening to me about this because of this book that I was reading. And so that was the early foundations of my testimony of the Book of Mormon, where I knew it was true. And that was enough to give me a base where I could move forward with my spiritual journeys, having that testimony.
I love it. And then you graduated at 16 after your sophomore year. Is that how that worked out?
No, what happened is I have a September birthday. So when I was starting kindergarten, my mom had the option of, holding me back or starting me early. So she started me early. So I was basically a year younger than everybody in my class when I started. Then when I got to second grade, I was basically a year younger than everybody. And then my mom and my neighbor and his mom also said, you know what, our kids are really smart. Why don't we skip them a grade? And so they had us take some tests. And so I remember going into a room, took some tests as a second grader. And then I guess we passed and did well. And they said, yeah, they're smart enough, move them up. So then about 3/4 of the way through second grade, they skipped us up to third grade. So I only had like a couple of months of third grade, and then we went to fourth grade the next year. So from then on, I was always basically 2 years behind everybody in my class, all through elementary school, junior high, and high school. So it made it interesting because it was a challenge trying to fit in and deal with that.
Made it hard to ever be in sports or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And so my older brother, they did that to my older brother, and he was fine because he really was smart, and he was an academic, and he ended up being a chemical engineer, got his PhD. He's all into science and all that kind of stuff. He's really smart. And then I wanted to do sports, and so it made it hard for me because when I was, in ninth grade and wanting to try out for the high school basketball team, and I went to Brighton High School, which they had a really good team back then. There's no way I was going to make that team. I was basically a seventh grader trying out for the ninth grade team, and I went to tryouts, and I was just like, it's not going to happen. And so I realized I wasn't going to be participating in sports on a high school level. And so it was hard. There were some hard things dealing with that.
Yeah. So then after you graduated, a couple years later, you decided to serve a mission. Can you tell us a little bit about your mission and how that helped you come closer to Jesus Christ?
Yeah. So obviously I graduated when I was 16, and I started up at the University of Utah when I was still 16. I still hadn't quite turned 17. So I had 2 years to go to college. So I had a lot of time to go to college and figure out what I was doing. And then I decided that the best thing for me would be to go on a mission, especially considering the experience I had with reading the Book of Mormon, and also just following the example of my older brothers and my parents. Both my parents had served missions, and I thought, this is probably a good thing. And I don't want to, go do some of these things that are kind of leading me into trouble. I could see where those things were going with some of the choices I was thinking about making. I had some friends who were doing things that I knew I probably shouldn't do. And so I started to say, I don't think I want to go that way with those friends. I better go this way with some other friends. And as I started to make those decisions and feel more firm in that, then a mission seemed more and more like the right thing that I knew I had to do. And so I started to prepare for that. And I'm so glad that I did. I got my call to serve in the Rapid City, South Dakota mission.
Which had the largest geography of any mission in North America at that time.
Yeah, it was a big mission. It included parts of 6 or 7 states. It included all of North Dakota, all of South Dakota, and little parts of Wyoming, Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota. So it's that big upper Midwest chunk of the United States. And a lot of open space, but not a lot of people.
And how did that mission help you come closer to Christ?
My mission taught me a lot of things. First of all, I think the main thing it taught me was humility. The Lord humbled me in a lot of different ways. Because when I had graduated from high school, even though I never really latched on to being an academic and being a good student, honestly, I barely graduated from high school. I chose playing and goofing around way more than studying and getting good grades. So I barely graduated from high school, but still, there was something in me that was kind of cocky. Like I thought, you know what? I've had 2 years of college and I've been around the block a few times and I'm going to be an awesome missionary. And I somehow had this thing in my head that I was just going to be an awesome missionary when I really didn't have. I had read the Book of Mormon once, but and I think I might have read it again right before I left. So I kind of was really cocky, and I just thought I'm going to be a really good missionary. And I remember going on a mission and then meeting other missionaries, and some of them hadn't been to college, or they hadn't even read the Book of Mormon, or they, had a girlfriend, and I'd done all those things, and I thought, I'm way better than they are, and I'm going to be awesome. And for some reason, I had that in my head. But then the Lord quickly humbled me in many ways, and I realized
pride cometh before the fall, right?
Yes, yes. And so there were some very humbling things that happened to me that was like, dude, you got to get your act together. You're not that great, okay? You don't. It's not. Missionary work doesn't work that way. Is kind of what I learned. It's like you got to rely on God. You got to be humble. You got to be obedient. And it's not about you and what, your background. That has nothing to do with conversion of people. And so I learned some hard lessons that way. And, about a third of the way or halfway through my mission, I started figuring it out and realizing that you got to humble yourself and be an instrument in the Lord's hands, if you're going to have success.
Yeah. And not just on the mission, but how is that applied through the rest of your life?
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep that same mindset. I try not to, think I'm better than other people. And so, sorry, I like to make jokes about stuff. There's a couple of jokes they're brewing, but I'll try to hold back. You'll find I'm
You're
kind
welcome
of
to
lighthearted.
make.
That's kind of one of my weaknesses. I take sometimes I'm in the middle of a moment that seems, spiritual
You're
or
welcome to
heavy,
make.
and then I somehow find the lighthearted way out of it. But
you're welcome to make jokes. That's not a problem at all.
Okay. Especially being bishop now. I mean, I really have to watch myself. But yeah, but as far as being humble throughout life, I mean, there's so many things that happen in life where I found over the years that I have to rely on the Lord, and you can't rely on myself and my own abilities and skills. And so humility is a huge part of just accepting that the Lord has a plan. He knows best he knows what we need and when we need it, and being able to submit to that and humble ourselves. I found that when I think I know what's right and I think I know what the plan is and I want to go my direction, then the Lord often, corrects me and not chastises, but chastens me a little bit and tries to get me back going on the right path again. And so I've realized it's just a lot easier to not think that I know what's best for me and just rely on the Lord and just trust in his plan. And even though something might be going wrong or you think it's a bad direction, that there's probably some reason why the Lord has me going in that direction versus this direction. And then later you can see the big picture. When you get through it, oftentimes you can back up and go, oh yeah, that's why that happened, because this thing was waiting there for me. And so I've seen that a lot in my life.
Then you came home from your mission and you got your first opportunity to produce a video. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so this was back in the 90s, early 90s, when the equipment and video production was a lot different than it is now. There's no, internet, no Instagram, no YouTube videos. So things were a lot different. And so when I was studying at the University of Utah, I thought that I wanted to be, I first signed up in college, and I thought I'm going to get my business degree. I'm going to maybe get an MBA and go down the line of business. And then after a couple of years of that, I realized I was in this economics class, I think it was a statistics class. And I thought, I hate statistics so much. If I have to deal with these kind of numbers and this kind of stuff my whole life, I do not want any part of this. I want to do something that I like and that's fun. And so I thought, well, what do I like? And back then, all I thought about was sports. And I thought, how about I get a job where I can be the sports guy on the news? And so I want to be the guy on ESPN. I want to be the broadcaster on the TV station. So I started going down that road, and I switched to communications. I studied broadcast journalism. I got a degree there. And as part of that program at the U, you have to do, you're doing news stories. You're out, you take a camera out, you'd go film things, you'd interview people, and then you'd bring it back and edit a little news story. And then they'd play it on this. They had like this in-house closed circuit news broadcast at the University of Utah. And so I was like the anchor man, and then we'd do these stories and we'd do like a news broadcast. So I did that. And at the end of that, we got hired to do an internship for a company, and this internship involved making a video for this event. And so me and another guy there, we filmed this whole thing. We edited this video, we finished it, and that was right when I was graduating. I just graduated, and I was at a family event with my wife's family, and her uncle came up to me and said, "What are you doing with your life? What's going on?" I said, "I just graduated. I just made this video," and video was kind of a rare thing. There wasn't a lot of people who could produce videos back then. And he said, "You just made a video?" I said, "Yeah, I've made one video." And he said, do you think I could hire you for my business to make this video about this new product we have?" And I was like, "Sure, I'm qualified. Let's do it." And so he said, I'll pay you. So figure out how much to charge. So I started researching it. I started calling other production companies, and I found out that there were companies that did this. I didn't know that. And then after a little research and a little talking about it, I told my wife, "You know what? I've made one video. I think I'm qualified to start a video production company." And she was like, "What? What are you doing? I don't want that. I want you to go get a job and let's have a, steady income." And so, but she agreed, and so I started this journey of starting a video production company. And it took a while. I still had a part-time job while I was getting it going, and my wife was working full time. And it took about 3 years for me to be able to quit my part-time job, and for her to quit her job, so that we were just living off of it. It took about 3 years for that to happen, but we got it going, and it's still going today. So
I love it. It sounds like your wife was a really instrumental, critical part of you in your early faith journey and in your journey to create this business. I remember in the pre-interview survey that you gave, you said that shortly after your marriage, you had a discussion with her about how faithful you wanted to be as church members. Will you tell us a little bit more about that conversation?
yeah, it all centered around going to see a movie, because we had just gotten married, and we just gotten married in the temple. And then people were talking about this new movie that came out. I married in 1992, and shortly after, I don't even remember what the movie was, but we were going to go out on a date and go see a movie. And we'd heard this movie was great, and we were about ready to go. And then we looked at it and said, "Oh, you know what? It's rated R." And then we're like, "Well, what are we going to do? Are we going to go see R-rated movies? How are we going to establish our marriage? What are we going to do this, or are we going to, that's no big deal. We don't need to follow." The prophets was heavy back in that time, saying don't go see R-rated movies. And so we're just like, we had to ask ourselves that question. Are we going to go see R-rated movies, and we're going to just do whatever we want? Or are we going to follow what the prophets advise us to do? And so we had a brief discussion about it. And then she said, "You know what? I guess we should stick to our guns, what got us here." And so that's what we decided to do. We decided we're not going to go see the movie. We're going to try to be as faithful as we can. We're going to try this experiment of living the gospel. And we're going to pay our tithing. Let's go to church. Let's don't see R-rated movies. Let's try to be as faithful as we can. And we haven't been perfect at all that stuff, but we at least made the decision that that's what we were going to do. And looking back now, I think that was like a critical moment in our marriage and in our lives. And I see nothing but tons of blessings that have come to our life from making that decision at that time, and then also all the decisions that we've had since then.
What are some of the blessings that you've seen from putting the gospel of Jesus Christ to the test in your life?
I think the main thing is just peace and safety. Like the scriptures say, if you follow the commandments, there's safety and peace that come from living the commandments. They're a protection for you as you stay away from things like, I don't know, the obvious things that the church talks about are, drugs and alcohol and other sins that you could do. By staying away from those things, it creates this safety zone around you and your family. And I've seen that when we've followed the commandments and tried to live the best we can, we have that protection, and we just have peace, not only in our personal lives, but in our relationships and in our relationships with our family and in our home in general.
Yeah. Tell me about those early days starting your video production company. How did you see the hand of God helping you through those early years?
I think I saw the hand of God in several ways, because it was mostly in people that he led into my life, and clients and situations that helped this little production company grow. Like, for example, the first client I had, I told you about, was my wife's uncle and his business, and he was like this businessman, very successful, and his business was growing, and so he hired us, and then we made that first video, and then he continued to hire us over the years for another 15 or 20 years for many, many projects, which helped our business grow. And then my second client that I ever met was a gentleman named Alan Bostrom, and he was the owner of this small accounting school. And what his school did was they had a training program where they would teach business people how to do bookkeeping and accounting for a small business. And so he hired me to make a series of training videos that would teach people how to do bookkeeping and accounting. And so he would teach a class. It was like a month-long class every night for a month. And I would go and we'd film the class. And then at the end of the 30 days, people would graduate and they'd be, have a certificate as a professional bookkeeper or accountant. But by me filming that class, I would like film it. And then when it's time when the lecture was done, I'd turn the camera off, and then I would sit down and I would fill out my workbook too. And I basically graduated from this class. And that was critical because I just started a business and I didn't really know how to start a business. I didn't know all the things that were involved. And knowing how to do that basic accounting and bookkeeping was critical for the development of our business and the growth. So we knew how to keep track of things and to manage things. And so I thought that was a huge blessing, just meeting that person and that business. And then not only did it help me figure out how to grow my business and how to manage the business side of our video production company, but also he became a good friend and a great mentor. And he taught me many other things, business related, on how to manage a business. So that was huge to have him be my second client ever, just a person who could mentor me and guide me and help me figure out how to do it. So I think that was definitely a blessing and just a tender mercy that the Lord sent my way.
Yeah. Who is Jesus Christ for you?
Oh man. Well, he's my savior. He's the person who created the earth, the master of the universe. He's the person that I can turn to, that knows me, that hears my prayers, and that helps me and that loves me and wants to support me and wants to see me become the best person I can. And so I'm just forever grateful to what he's done to make it so I could exist in the first place, but then also have this life where I can learn and grow and develop and make mistakes and repent of those mistakes and then keep growing because of what he did for me through his atonement. So I'm just completely indebted to him and what he did for me.
Yeah. Yeah. The next question I was going to ask you are, what are some of the greatest benefits you've received from having Jesus Christ in your life? And it sounds like the atonement is one of those greatest benefits. Are there any other key benefits that you would want to highlight?
I think the atonement, I think obviously that's, the key thing, just knowing that we have that promise, but also just knowing and understanding God's plan. And for me, my brain thinks like, I like to know the big picture of anything I'm doing. I like to see, okay, I like to, I love maps. And I think the reason I like maps is because I like to know where I am, where I'm going, and how to get there. And I think the gospel of Jesus Christ gives us a map. It gives us a layout. We even draw it out on the board, with the pre-existence and earth life and where we're going. And just having that's like a spiritual map that I greatly benefit from, because I can look at that and I can take any issue I'm having and I can plug that into that map and see, where am I on this journey and what do I need to do to get from here to there. And so the gospel of Jesus Christ gives us that map, and it gives us that direction, and it gives us that focus, and it helps us see the big picture, so we're not wandering aimlessly around in life, and we have an end goal, and we know that that's to return back to Heavenly Father. And Jesus Christ is the compass or the guide or the person who made it possible for us to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Can you tell us, let's talk about a couple of the films you made and maybe some key spiritual points that help strengthen your testimony from those films. The first one that I want to talk about is the Alex Boyé story that you did. We've had him as a guest on our show, and just a phenomenal story, a phenomenal person. Can you tell us about what stood out to you from that project?
Yeah, that was many years ago. I think it was around 2010 or something like that when we made that documentary. So that was back when Alex only had one child and now he's got eight. And so it was a long time ago, but it was his journey of faith and conversion to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so um, I had met Alex we were filming another documentary in 2001 where we were traveling through Europe for a couple months, and he was performing at one of the venues. And so I bumped into him and we met, and then just kind of got to know each other briefly. And then he came back. Then after that was over, I was back in Salt Lake, and he had moved to Utah. And I bumped into him at Excel Entertainment, which was a label that was promoting bands and musicians and stuff. And so we reconnected for a second, and I'd heard about his story. He was living here in Utah, and some people were talking about this guy and his story and stuff. And I was like, his story sounds pretty amazing. And so I reached out to him and said, "Hey, do you want to do a documentary?" And he's like, "About me? Sure, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it." So we got all in, and we went back to London and we filmed it and learned his story in depth. And um, he's a great guy, but he's had some rough stuff go on in his life. He's had some big challenges, and he didn't grow up like a lot of people in Utah did. He had some serious challenges with his family, with his parents, with his mom and his dad, and just the way
Living on the street.
yeah, living on the street. He had some really hard stuff. And so, and since the documentary, he's had some more challenges, and there's a lot of stuff going on with him and his wife and his family, and a lot of things. It's rough. And so, but I learned from him that he has a believing spirit. I think he has a lot of energy towards the gospel, and he was, had this conversion where he knew that even though his life was really hard, that the Lord was with him and guiding him and helped him go through that conversion process with the sister missionaries. And of course, he joined the church, and he did serve a mission himself in Bristol, England. And then just his journey after that, joining the Tabernacle Choir and some of the other things he's done. He just really wants to share the good word of God with people, and do that through his song and through his performance. And I think he's got a lot of skill and talent and ability to do some good things in the world.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Um, is there another project that you've worked on that has increased your faith in Jesus Christ?
Um, yeah, the one most recently that was probably the biggest impact was, well, we as a production company, we do a lot of stuff for the church. I mean, not a lot, but we do quite a few projects for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We've done commercials and ads and video projects and different things for different people. But a couple of years ago, I worked on the BYUtv show called Come Follow Up, which is a kind of a faith and inspirational show. It's basically like scripture study for an hour, where you talk about the Come Follow Me program for that week. And so we did 4 seasons of that. And I worked with my friend who owns another production company who had the contract with BYUtv to do that. And he asked if I'd just help produce some of the episodes. So I started doing that, and that was amazing. That was an amazing experience because I was producing an hour-long show. We did 52 episodes per year, and every episode you have to go in and find a guest for it, and then vet the guest, and then create all the content and write the script and figure out what the show is going to be. And it requires, it's all about that week's "Come Follow Me" lesson in the church, and so it forced me to read a lot of scriptures more than I normally would. And so you have to read and study and really get to know the "Come Follow Me" lesson inside and out, and then find a guest who's going to be a great fit for sharing that episode. And through that experience, I'm doing all this personal prep work and study to get ready for the show, which is basically like my own personal scripture study, doing that for every episode that I did. And then you get to meet all the great people. You're bringing on amazing people with amazing stories who have amazing testimonies, and then filming those stories and having them share those stories. Now, there's so many spiritual experiences we had on that show, just with people sharing super touching stories about their lives. And it just, every day, just would build your faith. And then working with the host, Ben Lomu, was amazing. Ben Lomu used to be a seminary teacher at Jordan High School, where my kids went to school. So they all loved him and knew him. Some of my kids had him as a seminary teacher. And then he became the host of the show. And he's just an amazing, inspirational guy who's just full of love and energy and love for the gospel. So rubbing shoulders with him and people like that for 4 years while we did 4 seasons, it was just, I couldn't have asked for a better project to work on.
That must have been sad when that ended.
Yeah, we did 4 seasons, which was basically 1 year for each of the 4 of the standard works. And so we went through that and completed it. But we were hoping to do another cycle, but BYUtv said, we got enough content for a while. So that was a fun project.
If I had to pick a consistent theme from your life, from the stories that you've shared, the experiences, I would probably say it's that your testimony wasn't inherited and it wasn't assumed from somebody else, right? It was earned page by page as you read that Book of Mormon, year by year, as you served your mission faithfully, and one covenant kept at a time, from one episode produced on a show that strengthens your faith. It feels like this consistency that you've had as you've earned your testimony is probably the most consistent theme that I'm hearing for you. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I mean, I've never thought of it that way, but you're right. I think that's true. Every person has to earn their own testimony of the gospel. You got to put in some work, and by one means or another, I was invited or prodded or encouraged by the Lord in different ways to put in the work. Those challenges that came to me, like, hey, I challenge you to read the Book of Mormon and I'll give you credit. I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for that invitation and that challenge that seminary teacher gave me. And there's been a lot of other times when I was too stubborn to do stuff on my own, but the Lord prompted or prodded or encouraged me to do things. And I've always been blessed by doing things that are pushing me in the right direction. So yeah, I think it's definitely, in order to gain a testimony, you have to put in some work and put in a little effort, and then you'll be amazed at, I don't know, I've been amazed at the results that come from it.
Yeah, you had a coach or a variety of coaches that were giving you this great counsel, but you put in the reps that helped you earn the ability to have that testimony, to be out on the court. Okay. Dave, thank you so much for being with us today. In conclusion, why do you believe?
I think I believe because the choices that I've seen from my experience, when you make choices that fall in line with what Jesus Christ taught, I've seen the evidence of good and the benefit that comes to people. I've seen the blessings that come to me and my family from following Jesus Christ. And I've also seen the other side of it. I've seen what it's like in my own life when I'm making choices that don't fall in line with what Christ has asked. And I've seen a lot of people around me in my family. I've seen friends, I've seen relatives, I've seen a lot of people who have chosen to go a different path. And then I see the struggles that they have and the challenges and the frustrations. And a lot of it is due to the fact that they're chosen a way that God has tried to warn them, tried to give them a different outlook on life and a different option. But for me, I found that when I've followed the commandments of God, I see blessings, and it's brought me peace and happiness. And it doesn't mean I don't have any struggles. I still have challenges and hard times and some things that happen. But when you have the gospel and you have God on your side and you're trying to follow him and do what's right, I've seen the blessings come, and I've seen so many and so many little tender mercies come my way. And I've seen the hand of God in so many ways in my life that it's hard for my testimony to be shaken because of that. And so I'm so grateful for it.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your faith and your testimony with us today, Dave.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And here are my key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, inherited testimony cannot generally stand alone. Every disciple of Jesus Christ needs to earn his own witness, often page by page. Number 2, a personal witness of the Book of Mormon is foundation enough to hold a lifetime of faith. Number 3, conversion is the Lord's work, not the missionaries. Pride cannot do what humility makes possible. Number 4, small decisions to follow the prophet build a zone of peace around a marriage and family. And finally, number 5, the Lord places mentors and tender mercies along the path for those watching for his hand. Dave's story shows us that a testimony is not inherited. It's earned, often page by page, covenant by covenant. If his witness has strengthened yours, please take a moment to help share the story with others. You can do this by leaving a rating and a review for Why We Believe. You can add a comment telling us which part of Dave's journey resonated most with you so other people can better find these episodes. And you can also visit whywebelieve.com, where you can download your free guide on 13 strategies to increase faith in Jesus Christ to support you as you strengthen your own testimony.